How do you make a zombie movie when you're all alone? Because I like zombie movies, I've always wanted to make one. Some of my favorite horror films, shows, and video games have been zombie adjacent, or infected stories. But the challenge with a zombie film is that you usually need apocalyptic locations, a bunch of extras, and plenty of blood. Regardless, I decided to make one. The problem was, as you may have guessed, I had none of that.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Yeah, boy!
Just my living room, myself, and 7 hours between dropping my son off at daycare and my wife bringing him home. So I came up with a short film concept that was somewhat zombie adjacent, something I could make with a zero crew, zero budget setup. I developed this idea for a zombie film where the apocalypse isn't caused by the undead or a virus, but by sound. The infected are hypnotized by something they hear. They're being drawn somewhere. Once someone's hypnotized, they just keep walking and walking and walking until they reach wherever they're being pulled. So where are they being pulled to exactly? I don't know. It's not important to the story. But hey, if Hollywood comes a-knockin', I'll come up with something. So the film follows a guy who's survived this apocalypse so far. He's figured out that it's what I'm calling a mass auditory hypnosis. So he wears earplugs or listens to music constantly to stave it off. He's been doing this for months, maybe even years, settled into a routine. He's built solar panels on the roof. He's rigged up a bike-powered generator. He keeps the house clean to feel normal. He's alive, but kinda living a zombie-like existence himself. A few days before filming, I picked up a few supplies for production design from the dollar store and the thrift store, like a plastic bin, food coloring, an aquarium bubbler, some solar power energy books, cassette tapes, and dollar store jumper cables. I bought some canned fruit and tore the labels off to make it look scavenged, and, you know, because I like fruit, now I could write that off as a business expense. I already had an old cassette player, a bike, and a stationary bike trainer in the shed, so I just ramshackled it all together, connected the jumper cables from the bike to a piece of metal in the plastic bin filled with blue liquid, plugged in the aquarium bubbler, and imagined it was some kind of electrical conductive fluid. Would it make sense in the real world? Absolutely not. But it looked cool. I also had an old UPS that still lit up, so I used that to sell the illusion that he's generating power. It was all just a little bit of world building to kick off the film. I was planning to shoot in the same location as my last film, Power Outage, my living room, but I obviously wanted it to feel different. So I set this one during the day, which changes the mood completely. It also let me rely much more on natural light from the windows with just one Amaran 300C in a softbox by the kitchen door for a touch of extra exposure and backlight. Other than that, I relied entirely on natural light from the window because, again, I had 7 hours before daycare pickup. All right, so basically, I just dropped my son off at daycare. I've got several hours before I need to pick him up. In the meantime, I've got to tear this living room apart, turn it into a set, shoot the whole film, clean it up, put it back to normal before he gets home from daycare at about 4 o'clock. It is 9:10 a.m. right now. Let's see what we get. So my plan is to have the camera on this small, kind of easily movable tripod, and then that'll help me kind of be a bit more mobile. There's gonna be a wireless transmitter that I've used on commercials and other client projects in the past. That'll be hooked up to the camera, which will go to an external monitor so that I can see what I'm doing. The external monitor came in clutch. Since I couldn't be behind the camera, I needed to make sure that things were properly framed and that the autofocus was hitting where I needed it. Speaking of shooting it, I shot the whole film on my Sony FX3 with just a single lens, the Sigma 35mm f1.4 art lens. It's versatile for both wides and close-ups. It's razor sharp with the FX3's autofocus. It opens up to f1.4 for that shallow look and has a pretty close minimal focal distance. Plus, 35mm is just kind of my favorite focal length. So with the clock ticking, I started rearranging the living room. Wear this black tank top, the reason being The room is very bright, so white walls, very bright environment, so light will bounce around a lot in here, so I figured dark will make me kind of pop on the white of the background. One question I'm sure I'll get is that why is he so chill in this zombie apocalypse? I figure that he's been at this for a while and he has noticed that these infected or zombies or hypnotized people, they don't bother him, so he's let his guard down. Luckily, the sun, I won't really have to battle much lighting discrepancy throughout the day. It's a very clear, sunny day outside. There is not a cloud in the sky. The sun actually travels around that way, and the window is behind this camera right now. So I'll keep those doors closed. By the time I ran through filming and we see out as always, setup took longer than I'd hoped, which I should have expected, you know, doing everything myself. Okay, it's 11 a.m. I am about to start filming the intro. I got about 4-5 hours maybe to film everything in this living room and clean it back up. So wish me luck. I started with the inserts, all the table and bike shots. Even though it was simple and mostly natural light, all this still took over an hour to shoot everything. Then I moved on to the main scene, blocking it out before rolling and then shooting with about 3.5 hours left before pickup time. Boom, and then take the tape player. I started with the inserts of the tape cassette player since I knew I was gonna be dropping it on the floor. I wanted to make sure it was still functional for these shots. Then when it came to dropping it, I just laid out a bunch of blankets and pillows on the floor out of frame to give it a bit of a soft landing. Then I moved on to the actual scene and coverage, but the clock was ticking. Yeah, so the behind the scenes camera battery died, and shortly after, so did the lav mic I was wearing. But I was just too tight on time to stop and swap them. I shot a few split screen elements to sell the illusion of multiple people on screen at once, like here, where I just reacted to nothing. Then I threw on a sweater, went outside, and played the zombie banging on the door. Same trick again here for what I call the alpha zombie, approaching from the kitchen at the end of the film. I just ensured that I never crossed the middle of the frame as either character, so it would be an easy split screen. But time was running out. It was like 3 o'clock at this point, and I hadn't even had a chance to eat lunch.
You can't skip lunch. You just can't, guys.
Luckily, I'd been able to eat some pineapple because it was in a can in the script, but suddenly it was 3:30 p.m. and my wife went to pick up our son. So did I get it all done? No, I didn't. I shot what I could and then tore everything down before he got home, knowing that I would have to do a few pickups later. There were a few things I already knew I would need a bit of help with, mainly to sell the apocalypse outside. The next day, it poured rain, so no exteriors. Instead, I spent the day editing and therefore figuring out what, if any, other pickups I needed. When the weather cleared the next day, Melissa helped me outside for about 10 minutes to grab the remaining shots. Now, the apocalypse shot I wanted to get right. I set up the camera at the window and filmed a clean plate of my neighborhood. And then Melissa and I each went outside for a few moments and did a slow zombie walk. I also laid in the grass and the ditch in different outfits as the dead bodies, and then I composited it all together. And then after I color graded the shot, I brought it into Photoshop and slowly used generative AI piece by piece to destroy the neighborhood. I burned cars, I put holes in houses, trash on the lawns, and I made sure that where Melissa and I walked, we stayed in areas that I didn't need to edit behind so I wouldn't have to rotoscope us. Then I brought it back into Premiere, I masked in the hypnotized figures and the dead bodies, I added a film grain effect in Resolve and a handheld motion effect in Premiere so it didn't look like just a still image. I did the same thing in Photoshop for the exterior shot of our house where I weathered it, I added some solar panels to the roof, and cracked the porch glass. This window here actually is just boarded up at the moment because we're renovating a few things inside, so that actually kind of worked. For the opening shot of the film of the dead hand in the grass, I just went into my backyard, laid my arm on the grass, hung out there for a second, and then in post, I color graded my skin to have a grayish purple. And the flies flying around, they're just gray ovals, keyframed in After Effects with motion blur. Melissa operated the camera for the final few shots of the film of me as the hypnotized zombie, simply because I couldn't hold the camera and operate it while also being on camera. And then we went inside and grabbed one single pickup of her hands reaching into frame and grabbing the headphones off my ears in the living room. Tell me when you're gonna go so I can throw my head back.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Try one more. Originally, I tried something else that was a bit more ambiguous with just the hands reaching into the frame using split screen and not actually pulling the headphones off, but it just wasn't working in the edit, so I pivoted. Sometimes your first idea just doesn't work. After showing the rough cut to a few people, I realized it wasn't super clear that the infection was auditory. So I reshot a quick close-up of the journal prop I made, really lingering on the written words, mass auditory hypnosis, which seemed to help spell the concept out for some people. This is why Hollywood does test screenings, because what might be obvious to you as a writer or a director because you're so close to the material, might not be super clear to anybody else. As usual, once we locked the film, I scored it with Murray, who also handled the final mix. The film screened at a small horror short showcase alongside a bunch of other amazing shorts, and my other film, Power Outage, screened that same night. It was the first time in years I'd seen not one, but two of my films on a big theater screen. But since this one also starred me, someone who is admittedly definitely not an actor, it felt especially vulnerable. Somehow putting this film online and potentially thousands of people seeing it doesn't really feel like a big deal, but sitting in a room with 150 people watching it with me in real time is shockingly stressful. But sometimes you just gotta do something that scares you, like watching a little indie short horror film. You can start with this one, or check out a bunch of others on this channel. They're all right here. How convenient. Anyway, I don't know how to end this video. Have a great day. Okay, bye.